Hello, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to our weekly Moshiach Shir. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, shehakol niyeh b'voroi. I want to dedicate tonight's learning to a refuah shlema for Yosef Chai ben Esther, and also in the merit of my uncle, the neshama should have an aliyah, Eliezer Chaim ben Gavriel. Okay, we are now in the fifth Torah portion of the beginning of the Torah Bereshis, Chaya Sarah, therefore being the fifth Sicha of the series of Devar Malchus, starting in the Nun Beis Sichas 1992. This is one of the Pigazim, as they say, the very, very powerful Sichas. It's one of the most powerful Sichas of the whole series. All of them are tremendous, tremendous insights into Mashiach and redemption, and the most recent teachings we have from our Rebbe. And this one in particular is very powerful because it is the most recent talk we have from the Rebbe to the Kinnis Shluchim. Every year we have the Shluchim from around the world gather together, and they this year actually it's not going to be in a physical gathering. At least part of the shluchim are not going to be there. Part will be. But the idea is this is when all the shluchim around the world get together, and this is the most recent address we have from the Rebbe directly to the gathering of the shluchim, where he gives with specific clarity on exactly what our mission is in this world in general as Jewish people, and he also alludes to us what our specific mission is. So without further ado, let's get started. The Sikha was originally given in Parshas Chaya Sarah on Koach on the 28th of Mar Cheshvan. Let's jam. Aleph. V'amdeinu b'tchilasai v'b'tichasai shel kanisa hashluchim ha'elomi hashluchim shehaya shel kadosh l'mavrachami adma nasi yirenu. The Rebbe says we're standing at the beginning and the opening of the Kinnis Shluchim, the gathering of the emissaries of the Rebbe's father-in-law, who the Rebbe, of course, always alludes to as his Nesias. Wow, Mashiach now. What's going on, Dad? Nice to see you. As the Rebbe always alludes to the fact that he is a continuation of the Frierdiker Rebbe, of the previous Rebbe, and his Nesias and his leadership. And he addresses the Kinnis Shluchim. And they come from the farthest corners of the world. The Rebbe says that we're all gathered together from the furthest corners of the world. And the first thing is, the first order of business that we have to get down to is Es HaYisoid, which is the foundation of everything. Levata Es HaHitavkot Shel HaShluchim B'Dvar Zeh B'Klal, which is expressing the job, the work of the shluchim of our generation in general. The emissaries, when we say the shluchim, these are the emissaries. The Rebbe has personally sent out over 5,000 emissaries across the world to make sure that a Jew, no matter where they may be in their furthest corner of the world, will have Shabbos, have kosher food, have a place to pray, and of course, most importantly, as preparation for the redemption. And so the Rebbe says, first order of business, the Rebbe says the first order of business, and most specifically, we have to focus and concentrate on the specific work of our shlichus. In other words, the Rebbe is going to explain that at all times and places, every Jew has a general work we have to do. We have 613 mitzvot. We have from the women to light Shabbos candles, everyone to keep Shabbat, to keep kosher, from the men to put on tefillin. There's 613 specific mitzvahs that we have to fulfill. But the Rebbe emphasizes that in every generation, there's a specific mitzvah that is incumbent upon us that takes front and center stage over all the mitzvahs. And the Rebbe said in our generation, it is the Kabal Penei Moshiach Tzidkenu V'Geula Mitzvos L'Shleima, to receive the face of, and panei means face, and it also means inward. So to receive in an inward way our righteous Mashiach in the true and complete redemption. In other words, the Rebbe said that is the main focus of every single person alive in this generation, to prepare to greet and welcome Mashiach. For thousands of years, the Jewish people have been praying for Mashiach, and the Rebbe has emphasized the fact that it is happening right now, and that is where we need to focus our energy, on receiving and welcoming Mashiach into our lives. How do we do that? That's what we're going to learn now. Kamadubar kama pa'ami loisef ahanakudas hamishratofet b'kla avodas hashlichos shel bnei Yisrael b'kla. So the Rebbe says, first of all, we understand that there's a general service of shlichos, of the emissaries. And in this general service exists at all times for every one of the Jewish people in general. Because we're all emissaries of God. We all get sent in this world for a reason. I was only created to serve my master, to serve my creator. And that's a basic premise of all of Judaism, is that we're not here for ourselves. God put us in this world for a limited amount of time, and he gave every single one of us a mission to be his partner in helping turn this mundane world into a world that is fitting for God, a dwelling place for God. And therefore, the mindset of all of us needs to be not what can I gain out of this world? How much money can I accumulate? How many houses and cars and how much stuff I can buy, and how much pleasures and indulgence I could experience, but on what good I can do, and how many people I can help, and how I can make a positive impact on myself, my family, and the world around me. And specifically, this applies not only to every Jew, but to the emissaries of the leader of the generation, whose job and whose full-time work it is to spread Judaism across the world. Shihadaras as calling in hashluchos who naase sha'ar yede olim calling in hashluchos. So the Rebbe says, emphasizing again, we have our general shlichut. Shlichut again means a shliach is an emissary. So our shlichus is the work that we're doing as emissaries, as representatives of God. What is our work? So in general, again, we have our work that is incumbent upon all of us at all periods in time. But the Rebbe says, in every generation, we have a very specific job that is incumbent upon us. And all of our work and all the matters that we must focus on are specifically related to that task. Just to give you an idea, when Moshe Rabbeinu gathered up the Jewish people and said, it's time to go out of Egypt, and we now need to prepare to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai, that was our specific job at that time. We had to prepare, we had to go out of Egypt and prepare to receive the Torah on Mount Sinai. And at times of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the previous Rebbe under communist regime, the specific task was self-sacrifice to keep Judaism alive. Underground yeshivas, underground mikvahs, underground Beit Knesset, that was the specific job. So the Rebbe is saying, in our generation, we have a specific task, and all the matters that we do, everything connected to our Judaism, connected to our service of Hashem, must channel through that specific gate. Okay. And this is not only one specific detail of our work, of our shlichut, but the Rebbe said is the main and most important of everything. And the Rebbe says, and our specific work is to prepare to welcome Mashiach, and this point has to surround all the details of the service of Hashem. So just to emphasize that again, that means that everything we do in our service of God, in our generation, and the Rebbe gave this sicha to us 28 years ago. And he said, all of our work and everything we do right now in our generation is specifically connected to the task of bringing Mashiach, of preparing to welcome Mashiach. The Rebbe said numerous times, hundreds of times, and he even, his very first address, his inaugural address, if you will, when he addressed the Hasidim in 1951, he said that our generation is the final generation of the exile, meaning after 5,700 and at the time 5,711 years at the time of preparing, of working. We're the last generation of the exile and the first generation of redemption. That we will finish the job and the culmination of all of our work throughout thousands of generations of being in this world, as well as the entire purpose of why God created the world, is unfolding right now. And that is our specific job for every single, even every non-Jew in our generation, to prepare to welcome Mashiach. That's how the Rebbe opens up the address to all the shluchim. Right up from the beginning, he emphasized this is the most important part. This is everything. This is the main focus of all of our work that we need to be focused on now. As has already been expressed many times, and especially recently, and more specifically in the recent weeks and months, as we see from the signs and from the teachings of all our rabbis, we have reached the end of all ends. There's many, now it's beyond the scope of what we're getting into now, but there's many places in the Gemara Sanhedrin, and other places where it goes into specific detail of signs that will take place right before Mashiach comes. All the signs are done. We've already witnessed, and the Rebbe said we can see from the teachings of our sages that we are already holding in the final days before the revealing of Mashiach. As expressed from the previous Rebbe, and we've already done tshuva. In other words, the Jewish people in general have finished all of the work that's incumbent upon us, as we explained in last week's Sikha. That doesn't mean that each one of us individually doesn't have to work on improving ourselves, but it means that there's nothing in the world that is holding back the redemption from coming. We can't say, oh, it's because the Jewish people are sinning, because they haven't done tshuva, because they're not davening, they're not. No, the Rebbe says in general, everything's been done. Where am I holding? Oh, okay. Shekavar siyama as kol inini ha'avoda, afil niftatzach es hakuftorim. That all the work is completed, and we've even polished the buttons. Polishing the buttons is a euphemism. It's basically in the army, when you're done getting dressed in your military garb, the final step is you do a little shining up of your buttons, and that's when you know that you are completely ready for to be presented in front of your commander. The Rebbe said that all the buttons have been polished, meaning the final touches are already complete. And we're all standing and ready and prepared to welcome and greet our righteous Redeemer, Mashiach. And therefore, the emphasis on our work now is to be prepared in actuality to greet and welcome Mashiach. The Rebbe says before mamish. Before mamish in Hebrew means like in reality, like right now. Like these aren't fluffy words. These aren't let's make us feel warm and fuzzy and feel good, because don't worry, things may look bad, but everything is really good. Yeah, that's true too, but that's not the point. The Rebbe says before mamish, meaning that this is in reality. This is happening right now. It's unfolding right in front of our eyes. Mizah, move on, and from this we can understand Shemahatara shal kinas hashluchim ba'omi hanochi Mizbatas benakurazu. That the goal of the entire Kinnis Shluchim, of all the gatherings of the emissaries from around the world, is expressed specifically in this main point. That we must take upon ourselves good resolutions to bring these activities into reality. Ketzad V'vatza es hashlichos amiuchedes shel hazman shelanu kabal panei Moshiach Tzidkenu. That's 5 times in the first paragraph. The Rebbe repeated the same message again. That once again, the Rebbe said the emphasis on all the shluchim coming together at that point in time, and of course it applies so much more so to our time, isn't about, let's celebrate and eat and be so happy, we're shluchim, look how wonderful we're doing. Yes, great, that should be done, but that's not the point. The Rebbe says the point is, and the whole purpose of gathering the shluchim together is for one reason, the Rebbe says, to sit together and make good resolutions and how we're going to bring the redemption and how we're going to prepare the world for Mashiach. That is the entire point of the Kinnis Shluchim. That was 28 years ago. How much more so today? Okay, base, second letter. And the connection, relevance to the service of our shlichus, of our work, in Moshiach Tzidkenu, together with Mashiach, our Redeemer, Tuchan v'hasbaras hashayich l'Yisrael shel Mashiach atzmai. Im enu v'gader hashlichus v'klal. That it is expressed in connection to Mashiach himself, within the boundaries of the shlichus in general. Al ha-pasuk. Shlach na b'yad tishlach. So the Rebbe is referring out to the pasuk that when Hashem requested Moshe Rabbeinu to be the emissary, his first shliach, his first emissary, to announce to the Jewish people it's time to go out of Egypt, it's time for redemption. Moshe didn't accept the position. He turned to Hashem and he said, Shlach na b'yad tishlach. Send by the hand of the one who you will send. In other words, Moshe said, don't send me. He said, send Mashiach. Amar Hazal, Amar Moshe, Lefana, Rabbeinu Shalom, Shlach na b'yad tishlach, b'yad Mashiach, shehu asid galos. Moshe said, look, Mashiach is the one who's going to redeem the Jewish people. So send him now. What are you going to send me for? And go through all this and go out of Egypt and spend thousands of years in exile? Just send Mashiach now. That's what Moshe said. Leave me out of it. He didn't want to be he didn't want to sign up for the job, if you will. So first of all, we have to understand that Mashiach himself is a shliach according to the Torah. He himself is an emissary of Hashem. Mashiach hu hashliach shel Kadosh Baruch Hu l'golas Yisrael. That the job of Mashiach is to redeem the Jewish people. That is his job. He is an emissary of God, and he's been given a specific task. There's a story of a Sephardi guy who went one time by the Rebbe in the dollar line. I don't recall which year it was. Maybe you could find it from Dr. Google. And he said to the Rebbe, Rebbe, what is all this talk? People are saying that you're a Mashiach. What do you have to say about it? And the Rebbe smiled and said, I didn't want to be Rebbe either. In other words, Moses didn't want to take his job. And the Rebbe didn't want to take his job. A true leader is humble. A true leader is not fighting for a position of power or wealth or influence. A real leader, according to the Torah, has complete humility. And they don't want to do their task in their complete humility. And we saw that with Moshe, and we saw it again with the Rebbe. For a year straight, the Hasidim begged and pleaded for the Rebbe to take over the shlichus, to take over the Messias of the previous Rebbe, and he refused. Said, "I'm not fitting for the job." Anyways, so the job of Mashiach is to be an emissary of God to redeem the Jewish people. Hatam b'pashtus laman b'yakesh deis Moshe he kaperush Rashi aha pasuk b'yad achar shiratzak l'shliach. שאין סופי להכניסים לארץ להזויץ הגאולה לשיא. יש לך שלוחים הרבה. Basically, Moshe realized that he was not going to be the final redeemer, that the Jewish people were going to go into exile. And so he basically said, listen, you have a lot of emissaries. What do you want from me? Send the redeemer that you're going to send in the future. Send Mashiach. Because he knew that Hashem was not going to send him to be the one to lead the Jewish people into Eretz Israel in the future to come. And the shlach achar. Rather, he said, send Mashiach. Shishlach es Mashiach lihiyois goal. What's happening? How you doing, Sue? So the diagram behind me, that's it's beyond the scope of our lecture. One of my projects, I don't know when it's going to happen, but one of my many projects is that I wanted to write a book about my experience and my journey from my previous place in life to where I am now. So that's basically a little bit of a roadmap of all the different processes. Don't worry, I'm not a secret agent for the CIA or the FBI. Some people come over my house and they look at that, they're like, dude, are you some kind of like, do you work for the Mossad or something? Okay, so basically Moshe said, don't send me, send the Redeemer, send Mashiach. He needs to be the one who's going to redeem us, and therefore, why are you bothering me with this work right now? Send him. Hashem we know that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, was the epitome of holiness and wisdom. It says there no other prophet arose amongst Israel like Moshe. He was the Torah came through him. We know that the Torah is called the Torah of Moshe, the 5 books of Moses. And Hashem himself knows in the future who he's going to send, the Redeemer Mashiach, and he knew it wasn't going to be Moshe. The Goal Yisrael Esti, because Zeis was Machar, but Moshe Kashliach the Goal as Yisrael Mitzrayim. Yadua in came but Kesh Moshe Shlach Nabiyat Tishlach. So what's going on? Like, why is Moshe the epitome of wisdom and of Kedusha? Saying to Hashem, send from the hand the one you're going to send. He knew that he wasn't going to be Mashiach. He knew he wasn't going to be the Redeemer. Why is he saying that? Why is he making such a comment to send Mashiach when he knows that it's not going to be him? Again, why is he not receiving? Why is he not accepting the mission that's been given to him? In other words, Moshe was not a normal type of person like the rest of us, where we have a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer Tov, a good inclination and a bad inclination, and we know maybe what God wants us to do, but maybe we want to be selfish, we want to do what we want. There's a constant battle between doing the right thing, what Hashem wants of us, and doing the thing that we want. But Moshe didn't have that battle. Moshe was the epitome of holiness. So if God's asking him to do something, you would think he would say, of course, what's the question? What can I do for you? But that's not what happened. בקשה והעצה של משה רבינו היא אכן נתקיימה בפועל שעשה שליח הקדוש ברוך הוא שלח גואל את ישראל ממצרים. עשה עצמו ושולח לגואל את ישראל לשיא. כפי שנאמר במדרש שמשה הוא גואל ראשון ואחרון. But even though Moshe knew that he was not the one who was going to be redeeming the Jewish people in the future to come, there is a midrash that basically says Moshe was Moshe Rabbeinu. We're talking about Moses as he's known, Moses was the first redeemer, and he will be the last redeemer, implying that in the future to come, Moses himself will be Mashiach. But something can't be correct, because we know, well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Let's see what the Rebbe says inside. And for those who are joining for the first time to realize I'm teaching this is a book, it's not a book, it's Chassidus, it's the deep secrets of the Torah given to us by the Lubavitcher Rebbe. And so these sichos they're a little bit lengthy, so I read them in Hebrew and I translate in English and do my best to keep it engaging and interesting, because they're long classes. So whatever you can get out of it is great. So what's going on? Second. Oh, וזה היה היסה כוונה משה וכשעשו ישלחנה ביד תשלח. וכאשר עשר גול הראשון של הגול האחרון, שגם בגול הראשון תהיה קשור עם ביד תשלח. וגם הגול האחרון תהיה קשור עם משה. So there's a connection. When Moses said to God, send the hand of the one who he will send, in other words, send the ultimate redeemer, there's a connection to Mashiach, who's the ultimate redeemer, who will be the redeemer in the future to come. And there's also a connection to Moses, who was the first redeemer. Just briefly, because I don't want, it's a pretty lengthy sikha, and there's a lot of ground to cover, and we can only go over so many things outside the scope of the text. But Moses, or Moshe Rabbeinu, was the first Mashiach, the first redeemer. In other words, throughout our history of the Jewish people, we have been exiled in countless nations. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's 129 countries we have been welcomed into, and then at some capacity having pretty much everything we own taken from us and thrown out. So we've constantly been enslaved, if you will, on numerous occasions, under the rulership of a lot of times very cruel dictators and not so nice leaders. Sometimes, I'm talking about not the Jewish leaders, but our host nations. So this concept of redemption is a basic concept of our entire religion. And the very first time it took place is when we became a nation, when we were in Egypt, and we were slaves under the rule of Pharaoh. And again, there's so much to talk about on this, but just, when we first went into Egypt, we were being paid. In other words, we were paid workers, and Pharaoh was paying us to do his hard labor to build his pyramids. And then what happened is eventually he stopped paying us our full salary, and he said, oh, things are tough right now, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit less. And they didn't miss a payment, and so I'm sorry to pay you this week, I'll make it up to you next week. And then slowly, before we knew it, over a period of time, our voluntary labor became involuntary servitude, and we were chained. We turned into slaves. And a lot of parallels could be said in where we are right now. Even though America is a land of freedom, it's the nation that's been the kindest to the Jewish people and allow us to conduct our religion openly. At the same time, we have to ask ourselves, are we really free? Or are we slaves to our work? Are we slaves to the fact that every single day we have to focus so much energy and effort in things outside of potentially what we should be doing? So again, I don't want to get too far out of scope, but when we were slaves in Egypt, so God chose Moshe and said, you have to be the Mashiach. Mashiach means the anointed one, means the one in every generation there's someone that God chooses to bring the Jewish people out from exile. And Moses was the first redeemer. He took us out of Egypt. And that opened the gate, that opened the pipe from above, from this concept of redemption, which is part of the very essence of who we are as Jews, that we will, throughout our period in this world, continuously to be enslaved. That could be a physical slavery, it could be a spiritual slavery, however you want to look at it in different times and different places. But that throughout our history, we will continue to be redeemed, and ultimately we will reach the culmination of the ultimate redemption, which is Mashiach, when the third temple will be rebuilt, and we will all basically make a pilgrimage to Israel, and we will reach eternal freedom. Mashiach, or redemption, is when there's no more war, no more death, no more disease, no more sickness, and the world will reach the state of ultimate fulfillment of how God envisioned it when he created it 5,781 years ago. So moving on inside, there's a direct connection between the first Redeemer, or the first Moshiach, who is Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, our teacher, and the last Redeemer, who is Mashiach, who will take us out permanently from the exile. In other words, Afal Pi Moshe u'Mashiach Hem Shnei Anashim Shanim. So in other words, the Rebbe says that Moshe and Mashiach are two different people. Hem Mahavim Shnei Eninim Nifradim Hem Miskashrim Va'achdim Ze Im Ze Kedacham. In other words, I must say is right. It's time to get out of the exile. So in other words, when the in the Midrash, when it says the first Redeemer is the last Redeemer, it means that there's a direct connection between the first Redeemer and the last Redeemer. Not that Moses is going to be Mashiach. He was the Redeemer of his generation in the time of Egypt, going out of Egypt. But there's a direct connection, even though they're two completely different people. Mashiach comes from the tribe of Yehuda. Moshe came from the tribe of Levi. Different people, different functions, but a deep connection. There's a deep connection, basic concept in Judaism, that the end is wedged in the beginning. So the very beginning redemption out of Egypt is connected to the end redemption, which is what we're experiencing in the times we're in right now. Gimel. Let's get a little bit deeper into this concept of Mashiach and what our specific roles are, because a Jew is not a spectator. We do not sit around and watch things happen. We make things happen, and God has appointed each one of us as his emissaries to help bring about the redemption. And let's figure out how we're going to do that. Gimel, ha'enin yuvan b'hakdama sabiur b'klalois geder hashlichos b'torah. Hachal hashlichos harishayna shemoseferes b'torah b'parshasinu. Hashlichos shalach Avraham im Eliezer l'metzah la'asois shirach el avor Yitzchak Banoi. So we see in this week's Torah portion, Chaya Sarah, we have the first actual shlichut in the Torah that is spoken about, long before Moses as the shliach of God taking the Jewish people out of Egypt. We have the first example of a shliach. A shliach is an emissary. And what is that? That is Eliezer, who is the servant of Abraham Avinu being the first Jew. His servant Eliezer, he basically instructed him that I am sending you on a mission as my emissary. Again, a shliach is an emissary. And the mission is to find a wife for my son Yitzchak. That's your job. This week Torah portion, we learn about the first instance of a shliach, of the concept of a person sending another person to conduct a mission on their behalf. And we see afterwards that Eliezer, in fact, completed his mission that Abraham sent him on, and that was to find a shidduch, a wife, a match, if you will, and he did. He succeeded in finding Rivka, who became the wife of Abraham's son Yitzchak. Yesh mekoyin hakor together uvadin. Hashlichu shel Eliezer b'kiyum divrei Avraham alav lekach asher levenei Yitzchak. So the Rebbe says we have to explain a little bit about this relationship, because this is going to help us understand our relationship with God and how we have to fulfill our mission. So what was this relationship exactly between Abraham and Eliezer, his servant, who he sent out on this mission to find a wife for his son Yitzchak? So there is a way to explain this in different ways. Aleph, the first one. Eliezer shliach haya the kedushin. Shluchai shel adam kamoyhu. So the first way we can look at the relationship between Abraham and his servant Eliezer is that Eliezer was a shliach, an emissary from Abraham, that got sent to effectuate the marriage between Yitzchak and what would become Rivka. And therefore it says that the very definition of a shliach is shlucho shel adam kamoisoi. He's exactly like the one who sends him. In other words, the true job of a shliach is literally an extension of the meshulach, the one who sends him. So I don't want to get into it because we're going to explain it at length. So that's one capacity that we say that Eliezer was a real shliach. He was a real emissary, meaning that he was literally like an extension of Abraham. He literally had no independent will, no independent choice. He just went out and did whatever it was that Abraham sent him to do. Literally like an extension, if you will, of Abraham. The second capacity that Eliezer, we could say he operated in, is Eliezer begeder hashadchan. He operated as a matchmaker. The mitzvah is Isha Yitzchak, to bring about the marriage between Yitzchak, Abraham's son, and his would-be wife, or afilo shadchan the kedusha. אף על פי שגם שדכן בכוחי לקדש, אין זה עושה כבר כמו השליח. The difference is a shadchan, or a matchmaker, is not imbued with the same power as a shliach is. Shuhu kamoyoi, a meshulach. He is not like the one who sent him. He is not an extension of the one who sent him. And therefore we do not say that a shadchan, a matchmaker, is like the one who sent him. On the contrary, shadchan hu beperush loy kamoisei. He is specifically not like the one who sent him. Rather, it's like he's doing a favor for the one who sent him. Just look at it in the context of, let's say you're ready to marry off your daughter. A shliach would be, you would tell the person, go find a wife for my daughter. That's it. You have complete trust that that person is going to find the exact wife that you're looking for. I'm sorry, the exact husband you're looking for your daughter. And it's literally like you going yourself and doing it. Whereas a shadchan, you call up and say, hey, my daughter's ready to get married. Here's what we're looking for. Give me some examples. Send me pictures of the guy. Tell me what he does. Let me help the process. I want to, agree whether or not she should date him. The shadchan is literally just the matchmaker, the one who's going about trying to find, but then returning to the person who sends and getting approval for what happens. A much lower level of responsibility, a much lower role than a shliach, who is literally has the full power to do whatever it is that he's been sent to do, because he's literally like an extension of the one who sent him. And we're going to delve a little bit into this relationship to understand the difference, these roles of Eliezer, the servant of Abraham. And again, all this is not just to talk about the whole point of the Torah. Torah comes from the lashon root of ha'ara, which means to teach, to learn. So the Torah is not just a history book. It is here to instruct us and to guide us in every aspect of our life. And ultimately, that's where we want to go with all of these teachings, especially what we're learning tonight, is to come away with a deep understanding of what we are to God. Are we matchmakers or are we emissaries? And specifically, how we go about our mission. And therefore, the Rebbe is using a parallel of the first example of either a shliach or a shadchan, or an emissary or matchmaker, through Abraham and Eliezer. Okay. Yes, so there is a way to explain this. So in one explanation, we could say that Eliezer is not like a shliach like Abraham. He's not like the one who sent him. I'm just skipping through the parentheses. The Matzah Aliyah Shamar Lo Abraham Fannois Alav the Hishai said Besay Amelo Abraham Bene Barech Ba'ata Aror. Because we see right away one of the proofs that Eliezer is not a shliach is the first thing he did is said, well, hold on a second, Abraham, if you want me to find a daughter for your son Yitzchak, how about my daughter? Why don't we just hook up my daughter and have her marry Yitzchak? So right away he had a self-interest. A shliach doesn't have a self-interest. A shliach has, the definition of a shliach is his interest has to be completely aligned with the interests of the one who sent him. Otherwise, it's not a real emissary. An emissary who deviates from the path of what he's sent to do is not a real emissary. A real emissary has to have his mind has to be completely aligned with the one who sent him. So the first thing Eliezer said, well, hold on a second. How about my daughter? And Avram said to him, I can't marry my son with your daughter because my son is blessed and your daughter is cursed. In other words, they come from two different realities, if you will. They can't go together. It's not going to work. Let's skip the brackets. Mila yesh makoyim she's arvoy bezeh cheshbonot ishim. We see right away that Eliezer had an individual private calculation. Oh, that's the word. He right away, the first thing that popped in his brain wasn't, okay, what do I do for my master? It was. But right away he caught it and said, well, hold on, I could benefit from this. I could hook up. Abraham was royalty. He was, besides being the first Jew, he was the richest man in the world. He was, he was like the literally like royalty at that time. So he's like, wow, this is great. I could hook my daughter to marry the son of the king. So right away he had his self-interest, which we would think removed him from this classification of a real shliach. Excuse me, a real emissary. So let's explain it a little bit in a different way. Eliezer zaken beisoy hamoshav. B'kol sheloi shemoshav b'toras rabboi dola umashka b'torah rabboi l'achri Eved Abraham asher Eved melech וכו'. וגם ביקויים סיברי של אברהם לקח אישה לבני יצחק. It says that Eliezer was a servant of his master. And the servant of a king is like a king himself. It's a basic concept in the Torah. And furthermore, to fulfill the commandment of Abraham to take a daughter for his son Yitzchak, that Eliezer needed to fulfill this in the precise way that Abraham instructed him to do so. יסיר מזה אברהם משובעו על כך, משום כך, ואוי טעמים מסתבר לומר שהיא חי שליח לקודש אס רבקה. Hold on a second. So now it seems to be that there's an argument that we could say that Eliezer was a shliach, that he was an emissary, that he did want from the beginning just to do exactly what Abraham did. Okay, maybe he figured maybe Abraham would go for it. Maybe Abraham would accept my daughter as a wife for his son. And the proof that we're bringing now that maybe Eliezer was a real shliach was it says that he was an eved of the king. He was a servant of the king. And a servant of the king is like a king himself. And not only that, Abraham made him swear. How did he make him swear? He said, place your hand under my thigh. Why under his thigh? Because Abraham was the first Jew to give himself a bris, and that brit made a covenant between God and the Jewish people and between the physical and spiritual worlds. As we know, the world we live in is a speck. It's a minuscule 1/1,000,000th percentage of the true reality that's going on. There's infinite spiritual worlds. The more we refine ourselves, the more Torah we learn, the more mitzvahs we do, the more we work to connect our godly soul to God. The more we're able to perceive deeper realities of what's going on, and the more God reveals to us more deeper spiritual realities beyond what we see with our physical eyes. Otherwise, we're just bound kind of what the physical world is showing us. We think what's going on is what we see or what we hear. And anyone who knows anything about politics will tell you that what you're being told on the news by, I don't care who the politician is, is nothing, is very far from the truth. But that's beyond the scope of what we're talking about. So he made Eliezer swear. Eliezer took an oath that he is going to fulfill the will of his master. And therefore, there's a place to say that maybe he was a shliach, maybe he was a real emissary. ויש לומר שדבר זה מובן גם ממש כסוף ויקח העבד עשרה גמלים וגמלי אדוניו וילך וכל טוב אדוניו בידי. And literally sent him out with 10 of his camels, with his fleet of Rolls Royces and Bentleys and Ferraris. They were pimped up camels. כפי שמפרשים כמבואר, as explained by the מפרשים, שאליעזר החזק בראשיסי כל טוב אדוניו. That Eliezer, well, let me continue, he יכול לעשות בזה כרצונו, כפי שנאמר קודם לכך המושל בכוח אלוהים. Literally, that Abraham gave Eliezer all his stuff. He gave him all his, he gave him his camels, he gave him all his stuff. He literally set him up and basically said, you're my servant. You just took an oath that you will serve me faithfully. And therefore, all that belongs to me belongs to you. So we see more and more, it seems to be that Eliezer maybe was a shliach, maybe he was an emissary. Seemingly, since Abraham literally gave to him all that belonged to him, the Adam sha'alav yichol lihiyos safich im yistalmish bezeh kerek. Literally, he empowered him with all his stuff and said, I completely trust you. I don't think you're going to take my top of the line camel and go right off into the sunset and steal all my stuff. I'm trusting you with everything. And from this we're obliged to say that Eliezer was completely devoted to Abraham. And therefore he was an emissary to bring forth the wedding and the marriage between his son Yitzchak, Abraham's son. He was a shliach. He was an emissary. Because his entire being was connected directly to the essence of his master, of the Moshiach, the one who sent him. And therefore, Abraham gave everything in his reshus, in his possession to Abraham. All that he had, he didn't hold anything back. I'm telling Eliezer, he didn't hold anything back. So now we're seeing more and more that Eliezer seems to fit the bill of a true emissary. Dalit. And now the Rebbe says we can understand this. To understand these things, the differentiation again between a shliach, which is an emissary, again, which is completely given over to the one who sent him, to his master. No independent will, no desire for himself, no desire for anything other than to fulfill the will of his master. And a shadchan, which is merely just a matchmaker or someone who's using his own brain to try to think about good options, if you will, and then bring them back to his master. Someone who is not completely one with his master. So the Rebbe says to understand this first, we have to respond to what is called a klatz kashya. A klatz kashya it's a Yiddish term for a profound questioner. All zeh shtar matanas kasav Yitzchak. All kol asher loy. Kedei shekafsu l'shluach loy batam. That Abraham sent Eliezer out with a shtar. Shtar is basically like a contract to give to Yitzchak, to give to his son Yitzchak, and to give to his son Yitzchak to effectuate this marriage. And but he said, everything that I have, I'm signing over to you. I'm giving everything I have to you, my son Yitzchak. Here's all of it. This is part of the wedding, I guess you will, the wedding gift that I'm bringing you. Everything I own. Take it all the chips in. So what's going on? אפילו בנוגע למצוות צדקה הדין, הוא של העולם לא יקדש אדם ולא יחריב כל נזקו. ועושה כך כן עבד של דאז הכסוף. שהרי הוא אומר מקור אשר אלוהי ולא קור אשר אלוהי. איך יסתכן אפילו אברהם עשה קור אשר לא יצחק? So the Rebbe says, hold on a second. Even according to the pshat, to the simple meaning of the Torah, there's a basic concept in Judaism, and we're talking about tzedakah, is no matter how much you have, you don't give everything you have away. You never put yourself in a position where someone's worth $100 million, let's say. And you say, you know what, I'm going to give every penny I have to charity. That's forbidden according to the Torah. Because now you have nothing left. So now what, you have to go and you have to become a beggar? You have to ask other people for help because now you're dead broke? Well, I used to have $100 million. I gave it all away. Well, why would you do that? You're not. It's forbidden. You're not allowed to do it. So how can we make sense of the fact that Abraham basically gave to Eliezer, his servant, a deed to give to his son Abraham, to give to his son Yitzchak, saying, every single thing I have, I'm giving to you. Every single penny. I'm not keeping anything for myself. It seems to be not only Meshugana, it seems to be a complete contradiction to what is permissible according to the Torah. The Rebbe says, not only that, it's not like Abraham was on his deathbed. If he was on his deathbed and he was literally, dying, okay, so what does he need money for? He's passing in this world. He's moving on to the world of truth. He has no need for money. That would make sense, but that's not the case. At the time, Abraham was only 140 years old. People lived a lot longer back in the day. And he still had 35 years to live. Abraham lived 175 years. So he was only 140, excuse me. So he still had 35 years of his life left to live. How much more so should he have not given away all he had? He still needed money to survive. Okay. And we see according to Pinimius. In other words, everything in reality has multiple levels of depth, right? We'll use a simple example of an iceberg, right? You see the tip of the iceberg. So it's a phrase, right? Oh, it's just the tip of the iceberg. Underneath is the depth. Same with us. If we look at us from a physical way, what do we see? We see a fleshy physical body. Underneath our body and even beyond our skin and our organs and all our parts, there's an enlivening soul. It's called an animal soul, if you will, because it keeps our bodily functions together. And then inside of that is a godly soul that we're not even aware is there. And inside of that godly soul, there's multiple levels of depth. There's 5 levels of that godly soul. So, like everything in reality, there's layers, there are depths. And the same thing with the Torah. We have the Torah, which is we call the written Torah, which is the basic Torah that we learn, which is the revealed part of the Torah. Whatever we read, we learn. Adam and Eve, the first man, first woman, exactly like that. But then there's deeper realities. We have the Kabbalah, which explains Adam is representing the partsuf for the Zera Anpin, and Chava of Malchus, and Zera Anpin and Malchus together in the upper worlds were one. In the world of Adam Kadmon, they were completely unified. There's no such thing as male and female. They're one. And when they come into the lower worlds, they have to separate into a male partsuf and a female partsuf. I'm not going into all the Kabbalistic explanations, but the point is there's multiple levels of what's going on in the Torah. and multiple layers. So on a simple level, everything that we read happened. And Avram gave everything to Eliezer to give everything to his son Yitzchak. But now the Rebbe is going to explain on a little bit deeper of a reality and explain what was going on in what is called panemius. Panemius means deeper, the innermost aspect of the Torah. The Hasidus that we're learning now, like Kabbalah, are the secrets of the Torah, the not revealed to the plain eye part of the Torah that you have to delve a little bit deeper into. So in a deeper capacity, it says that Yitzchak was the son of Abraham, and Abraham gave birth to Yitzchak. Amar Hazal, the rabbis say, L'star panav shel Yitzchak doimeh Abraham. Like the face of Yitzchak was very similar to the face of Abraham. And it says because when Abraham was separated from his wife Sarah, they didn't want anyone potentially saying that maybe Sarah was not faithful to him, and therefore God specifically made that his son should look exactly like him to eliminate any questions. There's obviously deeper explanations, but I'm just giving you a simple explanation to that. So it's very interesting because the opening of this week's Sikha and the opening of the Rebbe speaking to the emissaries, his emissaries, explains that the main work we have in our generation is the Kabbalah Panei Moshiach Tzidkenu, to accept Panei. We explained a little bit. A panim in Hebrew, actually in Yiddish too, is a face. But panimi or panim also means inward. And we can see it in a simple way. A lot of times you can know exactly what's going on by someone by just looking at their face. Right? I come home from work sometimes and I'm tired, and as soon as I walk in the door, my wife looks directly at my face, and in 1 second she knows whether I had a hard day, whether I'm in a good mood, whether I'm tired, what's going on, because your face reflects what's going on. When someone who's in an inward way is in a place of peace, a place of happiness, in a good place, they radiate from their face. You see almost a glowing, a shining coming from their face, because their face is reflecting what's going on inside. If you want to know what you really look like to the world, it's sometimes we don't see it ourselves, because when we look in the mirror, we may be like, wait, what's that? Kind of perk up. But a lot of times, people who know you will look at you and say, what's wrong with you? You're like, there's nothing wrong with me. Why you look so angry? Something is wrong with you, because our face is reflecting what's going on inside of us. So when it says that the panim, the face of Yitzchak, Abraham's son, was similar to his face, it means not only their outward face, but their inwardness. In other words, their souls, their inward being were literally mirrors one of the other. And that's the same language that the Rebbe says at the beginning of the Sikha, that we have to receive the Panei Kabbalah Mashiach, so receive the face of Mashiach, which means we have to receive actually Mashiach as he is, as a human being in flesh and blood. His face, we have to accept that this is our Redeemer. But in a deeper way, it means that our inward being must be a mirror reflection of the inward energy that Mashiach is coming towards us with. And we're going to explain with God's help in the Sikha what that means. That ultimately what we need to accomplish, and when Mashiach comes, we're not only going to see our Redeemer, we're not only going to see Mashiach, but for the first time, for an overwhelming majority of us in our lives, we're going to get in touch with who we really are. Because keep in mind, for the most part, we live in a distorted reality, and we think that we are a particular type of person based on everything that has been taught to us throughout our whole lives, from our parents, our teachers, the news, television, movies, TV shows. We take all these things and we bring them inside, and we create a worldview of who we think we are. But the reality of it is, a lot of times it's a very distorted image. And in fact, a lot of times it can be completely contradictory to who we really are inside. And the more Torah we learn, the more we connect to God, the more we connect to our mission, the more we reveal who we really are. And that's one of the jobs of Mashiach. He will take away the external fog, if you will, and we will literally see face to face of not only Mashiach, but keep in mind Mashiach is a complete perfection of a living human being. It's literally godliness in a physical body, like Moses was. Moses is Ish Elokim, a man of God, and he was a physical body, but at the same time he had no personal interest. He was a complete pipe, if you will, for godliness. Mashiach, it's the same thing. And so Mashiach is going to enable and empower every one of us when we accept the face of Mashiach. Not only, again, does it mean his physical face, but we're literally bringing in and internalizing our true identity and our true mission in this world. It's an important connection. The Rebbe is bringing out the same exact word of panei, of face, talking about Abraham and Yitzchak. So anyways, back inside. So Abraham had, and Yitzchak, his son, were literally face to face. In other words, they were similar. And again, not just physical face, but their internal beings, their inner dimensions, their depth was aligned one with another. They were literally one continuation. It was like a flow. It was completely like giving over from Abraham to his son Yitzchak. Because our forefathers, they literally made up the divine chariot, the chariot of God, meaning they were all completely given over to God. And we know that, and again, there's just so much Kabbalistic and Hasidic depth that we could get into, but we do have a limited time together. So just briefly, that Abraham represents what we say is the sphere of Chesed, which is the right side or kindness. Yitzchak represents the sphere or the left side of Gevurah, which is strength or discipline, if you will. And Yaakov represents Tiferet or beauty, which is the balancing of both. So the energy, when it's flowing properly, that comes through our brains, which is our Chabad, Chokhmah, Bina, and Das, our wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, as it channels through our right side, which is Chesed, which is kindness, and it flows to our left side, there's no separation. In other words, even it goes from extreme to extreme, from an extreme state of kindness to an extreme state of strength until they balance in the middle, which is the beauty, the balancing act. It's still a divine flow. In other words, there's no separation. And Avraham represents the right and Yitzchak the left. And therefore, they were literally face to face, and that energy literally went directly from one into the other. So the Rebbe says, this is what it means that Avraham gave everything to Yitzchak, because he was an extension of him. He wasn't a separate being. Yeah, he had a different physical body, and it was his son, but from an inward, from a panimi, from a deeper reality, that energy was completely flowing. There was no separation. And therefore, he gave everything over because he had to give his whole being over. The Rebbe says, okay, according to Panemius, according to Kabbalah and Chassidus, now we understand what it means that he was literally like one with his son. But we still have to understand the pshat, the nigla, the simple meaning of how he could give away everything when that's contrary to Jewish law. Okay. So there is an explanation to this. Nisui Yitzchak Rivka, the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka. And Nisui Harishonim Aksuvim b'Torah. This is the first marriage that is written about in the Torah. The first actual marriage, Avraham and Adam and Chava, first man and woman. There was no marriage ceremony. They were born literally together as one. The first marriage of Abraham and Sarah was not discussed in the Torah. We know they got married, but there was no discussion of it. The actual first discussion of the marriage was with Abraham and Yitzchak. I'm sorry, with Abraham's son Yitzchak and his wife, who is Rivka. Einam rak nisuim pratim b'nei b'nei Yehudim Yitzchak v'Rivka ela einen hachi klali. Elu hayu nisuim harishonim shel zivug yichudi. So the Rebbe says like this, and we're going to start getting into some deeper stuff now. That the marriage between Yitzchak and Rivka was not a personal marriage. It was the first Jewish marriage recorded in the Torah. And therefore, it was what is called another general concept in Judaism. We have Prati and Klalit. In other words, Am Yisrael, the nation of the Jewish people, means that we're all one. Maladaptive learned behavior. Okay. We are all one as a nation. That is called Klalit. That means whatever I do affects you, whatever you do affects me. We're all together. And we have Prati, we have individual. That means we have our own individual specific mission and purpose. So even though this was an individual marriage between Yitzchak and Rivka, it was not an individual marriage. It was a general marriage that had meaning and representation for all of the Jewish people because it was the first Jewish marriage recorded in history, in the Torah. And therefore, the Rebbe says it was a klalit, it was a general marriage. כלומר, נוסיף הנישואים הפרטיים בין יצחק ורבקה, ומביאים נשיאיהם את הנישואים של כלל ישראל. That this was a marriage, again, we see not just between Rivka and Yitzchak, but it expressed literally a marriage for all the Jewish people. In other words, Shalochim Mr. Abraham al Inin Saklal Asher Loi, Yitzchak Banoi. When Abraham said to his servant Eliezer, give everything that I have to my son Yitzchak. Mipanei shezeh lo yirak chatuna pratis ben Yitzchak v'Rivka. From this, we could come to learn out that this was not only a specific marriage between his son Yitzchak and Rivka, but it was a general marriage for all the Jewish people. And from this, we could see it's connected also to Abraham himself. And first of all, we see that Abraham was the first Jew, and therefore, one second. He entered and gave forth all of his power for the benefit of all the Jewish people. What does it mean? Everything that he had. Allah medubar Abraham b'Torah prati shel Yitzchak lo masim az she'tain kol sheloi avar atunat benoi rak chelik hu mesein loi vehelek hu mashir Abraham alo ma'achar shenasuim halalu as inin haki klali shemakif as kol Yisrael. שזהו כל מהוסו ואין לו אישה אברהם, אין מקום שישר החלק של אברהם באופן שהוא מובדל מזה חס ושלום. לכן נשים כל השלוי, הוא נשים בזה אז עצמו לגמרי. So we see that Abraham, being the first Jew, he couldn't hold back. And again, we're shifting between Prati and Klali. We're talking between specific and general. That Abraham was the first Jew. That means he generalizes, and he's the father of all the Jewish people. Yitzchak was his son. When he gave everything to him, it's because Abraham was giving everything not just to Yitzchak. Keep in mind that Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, our forefathers, are known as it's called Chagas, which is Chesed, Gavor, and Tiferet. They represent the divine emotions, if you will. And all those emotions which are channeled from Chokmah Bin Das, from the upper intellect, if you will, of God. God doesn't have intellect or emotions. It's just our way of expressing and explaining what's going on. So Abraham had to take all this energy that came to him, and he had to give all of that energy out. If he held anything back for himself, it would have not allowed the proper flow of energy into not only his son Yitzchak, but the offspring from there, which is Yaakov, and all the Jewish people and us throughout all the generations. There'd be a blockage. It would almost be, God forbid, like someone with a blocked artery whose heart isn't working properly because there's plaque in one of their arteries and things aren't flowing. So even if there was a little bit of plaque there, it could eventually cause a stoppage. So if Abraham didn't give everything he had to Yitzchak, he would have been holding back his power, not only for his son, but for all of the Jewish people, for all the generations. And therefore, our forefathers, all of us, as a matter of fact, but how much more so our forefathers, represent not only individuals, but general energy sources, if you will, general states of consciousness that got spread forth to all the Jewish people for all the generations. So look at it as like, I hate to use the analogy of a pyramid, but we'll use that. Like Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov are on the very top of that. And all that energy had to keep flowing and flowing and flowing down. So Abraham, who's the head, the first Jew, had to send everything down into the pipe, if you will. And furthermore, this marriage came specifically from the power of Abraham. And therefore, he had to give everything over. He couldn't hold anything back. And according to this, in an even deeper way, we can see now even more that we're pushing into the side that the Eliezer, his servant, could not have been a shadchan. He could not have been a matchmaker. He had to have been a true emissary. Because he literally was like the one who sent him. And therefore, Abraham gave over everything, and therefore it had to be absolute. Without any little specific thing outside. Remember, Eliezer was a conduit, if you will, for the energy of Abraham to flow into the energy of Yitzchak. And if Eliezer had anything lacking in his mission, he could not have completed his mission for Abraham, and it would have caused a blockage, if you will, of energy, which was manifest through Abraham's physical wealth. There's a direct connection between spiritual and physical. Okay. בלי שום פרט מחוץ לזה, כך מובן גם בנוגע לאליעזר, שכל מציאוסיו היה כמו המשלח. And just like Abraham couldn't hold anything back when he was giving to his son, he also couldn't hold everything back when he's giving to Eliezer, because Eliezer was his emissary. He was the one who was bringing forth Abraham's flow of physical wealth, which represented the spiritual power underneath it. It says when the Jewish people went out of Egypt, we unloaded all of their wealth. We took out all of their money. We didn't steal it. They gave it to us. They literally said, take everything. I mean, tremendous wealth. Every Jew went out of there as like billionaires. So we learned that it was not just money, but that wealth, that physical money, had what's called as nitzotzot, which are sparks of godly energy. And therefore, we pulled all that godly energy out of Egypt. So the spiritual energy inside of the money came out with it. In fact, Egypt's the only place we're forbidden, according to the Torah, to ever live in. You can visit, but you can never live there because there's nothing left for us to do there. The godly energy, the godly sparks that were inside that land of Egypt all got hauled out of there. So there's no purpose for us to be there. Okay. And therefore, since Abraham had to give everything over to Eliezer, and Eliezer had to bring everything of Abraham, he could not have any personal interest. He had everything he did literally had to be as a flow from the energy from Abraham. Okay, let's see. I just want to check our pace so I know how quickly I've got to turn things up here. Looks like we're doing fairly good on time. Okay. Vav. A lot of stuff here. There's a lot of, I really try to do my best to give over the exact translation to the best of my ability of what the Rebbe is saying, but at the same time to try to explain it a little bit deeper to get some better appreciation, because there's tremendous amount of depth and lessons that we can draw out from these teachings. Not because they're my teachings, because they're the Rebbe's teachings. Now, of course, we're going to talk about things even a little bit deeper, right? We're just going deeper and deeper into the text and deeper into the spiritual reality of what is taking place. The Kuti Torah, and the end of the Kuti Torah, which is one of the books of Chassidus that was given over by the Alter Rebbe, the first Rebbe of Chabad, also the author of the Tanya, and the Shulchan Aruch, the Code of Jewish Law. He explains that the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka was not only a general marriage, like we said already. It was not just a specific marriage between Rivka and Yitzchak, but it was a general marriage for all the Jewish people. And now he's saying even deeper, not only was it a general marriage for all the Jewish people, but it was a general marriage encompassing the Torah and the entire chain of creation. Seder Hishtalshelus, which is called as the chain of creation, is basically the process, if you will, where God created something from nothing, where he took spirituality, spiritual energy, and brought it through a whole stage, a whole process through multiple worlds until it came down into this lowest world and became physicality. And not only that, this is expressing the general service of us. Yehud ma Yitzchak v'ban Rivka. And now we're going to get a little bit deeper into this comprehension and understanding as to what our mission is in this world. And that is that Yitzchak represents the divine energy of Ma, which is the name of Hashem, Yud Ke Vav Ke, which is the tetragrammaton, they say in English. So it can be spelled out in four main ways. And each one of them has a gematria, numerical value, of 72, 63, 52, and 45. I'm going to try to simplify this as much as I can in 1 minute. 72 is the divine name Ab, which basically represents the energy of Chokhmah, if you will, which is the source of the energy of all the worlds. The divine name 63, which is Sag, which is the numerical equivalent of 63, represents Bina, which is the fusion together of that divine energy, so it can then begin the process of manifesting into the lower worlds. Then you have the name, the spelling out of the name Yud Ke Vav Ke of what is called is Ban, or Ma, if you will, which is 45, which represents what is known as Zer Anpin, or the masculine spiritual energy that manifests and goes down into the lower worlds. And then the lowest world, which is Ban, which is 52, which represents the female physical energy. So Yitzchak represents Ma, which is the spiritual energy that is manifest down here in the lower worlds. And Rivka represents Ban, which is the feminine physicality of this lower world. Generally speaking, and again, we could talk about this for days, but there's a concept of creation, which down in this lowest world, the goal is to unify spiritual and physical. And the male component, which is Ma, which is represented by Yitzchak, is spiritual. And the female component, represented by Rivka, is physical. That doesn't mean that all men are spiritual and all women are physical, because every one of us has a masculine and feminine side. Every male has a feminine side, and every female has a masculine side. The goal, of course, is to balance these energies, not only between a husband and a wife, but between in ourselves and between us and God. So, generally speaking, the spirituality, or the mashpia, or the giver, which is the male, has to enter into the female and take that spirituality and enter into the physicality and transform the physicality into something holy, something spiritual. We see the reproductive organs of a man and a woman, right? The woman's womb, her uterus, is an opening, and the man's, whatever term you prefer to use, Johnson, member, rod, it's beyond the scope. Everyone has their own explanations how they like to use it. But it's an external organ, and the external organ has to enter into the womb. And this is the seed, the male seed, which is spiritual, combines with the female egg, which is more physical, and this is produces offspring. That's in bringing children. But in the same way, we bring spiritual children into the world every time we conduct ourselves in a way of this process, not just with a man and a woman, but with taking spiritual energy and transforming physicality, which is one of the reasons why we say a blessing. We say when a Jew, before we drink or we eat anything, we say a blessing. One, it's praising and thanking God for giving us the ability to allow us to drink and to bless us with the ability that we should be able to drink and eat. But at the same time, we're taking a physical. There was green tea with blueberry in here. So we're taking this tea, which is something physical or a piece of food, whatever it is, and when we say a blessing, we're releasing divine sparks, divine energy, and we're transforming something physical into something spiritual. So this concept is manifest through this first marriage between Yitzchak and Rivka. The Yitzchak is the male energy, which we said is Ma, which is spiritual, and Rivka represents the female energy, or the body, if you will, which represents physicality or bond. Shall call Yehudi, and this process exists in every single Jew. Shleimos hayuchud hanisuim ben Yisrael, Yisrael kuchba kulacha. And this takes place in a macrocosm, if you will, between all the Jewish people and God. And this will be revealed in the true and complete redemption. So we've got to pause for a second, because we're getting to the ultimate explanation and purpose of all of these things. So there's a lot of deep Kabbalistic explanations between the relationship between a male and a female. And that's why the concept of marriage is so holy amongst the Jewish people, and why, according to halacha, according to Jewish law, we're not allowed to have relations with our wife when she's in her menstrual cycle, because it brings impurity into a very holy act. But the main concept is that the male, which is the spiritual energy, or the soul, and the female, which is the physical body or the physical energy, unite and come together, not just to bring children into the world, but to bring about this culmination of the whole purpose of creation, which is to bring spiritual and physical together. So God in general is considered more, he has masculine and feminine sides, but in general, he's considered more of a masculine role, or the mashpia, or the giver of, giving over energy or spirituality. And the Jewish people in general are the female or the physical. And our job is to take this divine energy, the seed, if you will, of spirituality, and bring it into our being, and take that divine energy and implant it into the physical world to transform the world into a dwelling place for God. And that is what Moshiach is about. When Moshiach reaches its full culmination, it says when the Jewish people received the Torah on Mount Sinai, and the Torah was the beginning process of uniting spiritual and physical worlds together. That was like our engagement. But when Mashiach comes, it says our marriage will reach its state of culmination. And that's what the Beis Hamikdash is. The Beis Hamikdash is God's home, where that energy of physical and spiritual come together as one and manifest throughout the whole world. And when Mashiach comes, that will reach its total state of perfection, that the world will then be a perfectly balanced energy source. In the Far Eastern religions they have this concept of yin and yang. It's an offshoot of Judaism. It's the same basic concept of these two positive and negative energies, or physical and spiritual, which seem to be opposites. But the whole point is that God represents that spiritual energy, the Jewish people together, that physical energy, and our goal is to unite both of those together. That is redemption, not only in a general sense, not only Mashiach for the world, but each one of us specifically. The goal is balance. The goal is to get to the point where we have reached a state of perfection within us. I'm not talking about physical perfection, that your teeth are bright white and they're all aligned nicely, and you make sure you pluck out your ear hairs. I'm very careful about that because they're very annoying when I get little hairs here. But that's we're not talking about that. We're talking about a divine sense of balancing or perfection, where you're aligned, where your physical and spiritual energies are balanced, your connection to God is balanced, your masculine and feminine energies are balanced. All these things together bring about redemption, or Mashiach, if you will. Okay. And this expresses the general service of man down here in the physical world in fulfilling the Torah and the mitzvahs in this physical world. The unification of these two different energies of ma and ban, spiritual or physical, soul and body. A lot of people especially secular Jews, talking about myself included, before I kind of took a leap of faith, if you will, and entered back into our source of what it means to be a Jew. We look at the Torah or commandments. It's a bunch of stuffy, antiquated laws and rules. What does God care if I drive my car on Shabbat? He really cares. He really cares if I go on the computer. It's not only that he cares; it's that by following his rules and by following the Torah, we're becoming his partner in the entire purpose of creation. We're literally uniting and infusing God and us and the world as one. We're combining a soul of spirituality and a body of physicality into one. Every mitzvah, every time we learn Torah, every time we keep kosher, we're bringing that unity together. I think the first time I told my parents, when they couldn't believe I stopped eating shrimp and lobster, I'm like, you can give me $10 million right now, I wouldn't eat a shrimp or a lobster, because I have now a deeper understanding and appreciation that when I do that, I'm disconnecting myself from my source. You may not notice it, may not look like it's any different, but God's saying, in order to unite these energies, do this and don't do that. Eat this, don't eat this. It makes sense. It doesn't make sense. Because the fact that we're talking and eating and breathing, and we have 5 fingers and 2 eyes, and there's 10 million moving parts in the cone and retinas of our eye, and that and the sun comes up and the moon, that makes sense. No, we call that nature. None of it makes sense. It's all godly. It's all miracles. Anyways, we're getting too far off scope. So the idea is that the whole purpose of creation, the whole purpose of learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, is to unify these two energies of ma and ban, spiritual and physical, soul and body. And the time the Torah was given, one of the unique things that it brought to the world is, before the Torah was given, there was the upper worlds, which were spiritual, and the lower world, which is physical. And there was a curtain, if you will. There was like an iron, there was a separation, a rekia, there was a division. So there were two complete realities. You had spiritual and physical. When we received the Torah, God broke through those boundaries and said, now I'm giving you a tool. I'm giving you this Torah as a means to take this physical world and elevate it up to the heavens and to bring the spiritual heavens down to the physical world. That's what a Magan David is, by the way, a Jewish star, right? It's 2 triangles. You have one triangle pointed up, which is representative of taking this physical energy and elevating it to its source, to the spiritual heavens. And then you have one triangle coming down, which is to draw the spiritual energy from the heavens down into this physical world. And when they unite together in the middle, this is the fusion of everything. And that's the whole point of receiving the Torah, to bring together these 2 energies. And through the Torah, this gives us the power to unite physical and spiritual together, to take a physical body in a physical world and transform them into something holy. To take physical objects and turn them into holiness, kedusha. Shleimus Yehud Zeh, B'taklis Shleimus Gilui B'Gulamitis Shleim. And this will reach its ultimate state of culmination in the true and complete redemption. When we're screaming all the time for Mashiach, it's specifically because of this point. Because we want the world to reach its ultimate state of fulfillment, the whole reason why we got put in this world. Al Pizem Muvua B'Likuti Torah. Madua Torah Ba'aricha Oidoi Shlichi Saliaz Shechen Zeh Hayak Enen Shlicha Saliaz. Vorer the Hemshech Yehud Zeh Shel Yitzchak V'Rivka Ma'uban Balach Hamshich Bechinas HaYehud Mamish Shu Bechinas Nisuin B'Prati Opinimis. Amazing. We see that the entire Torah portion that we're learning right now, Chai Sarah, if the whole point was for Yitzchak and Rivka to get married, I think it's one sentence. It's a very brief point. The bulk of this week's Torah portion is about the process of Eliezer going out and finding a suitable wife for Yitzchak and bringing about the marriage between Yitzchak and Rivka. Not the marriage in and of itself, but the process of bringing it together. Why? Because, the ultimate goal is the actual event. It's the wedding. The ultimate goal is the wedding between us and God, between the Jewish people and Hashem. The ultimate goal is Mashiach. But the whole point, and this is the point why the Rebbe brings this forth in the Sikha, and this is why the point the Rebbe says that the main work right now is to accept Mashiach, is that our job is not to sit back with a remote control and watch Netflix all day and just sit there like this and watch and just sit around and wait, and when God wants to bring Mashiach, he'll bring Mashiach. No. We are active participants. The whole point is the work now, that all the effort we're putting forth now to help become God's partner, to bring this into reality, that's what it's about. It's not about the final moment. It's about the process. It's about the work. It's about bringing all of this together. And that's why God made each one of us an integral part. And that's why the Rebbe made each one of us his partner in bringing about this marriage. Because the marriage between Yitzchak and Rivka, or Ma or Ban, or soul and body, physical and spiritual, is a much deeper concept. We're starting to unfold that this is not just a simple marriage. This is about bringing together these 2 energies of physical and spiritual and uniting them together, bringing redemption into the world. B'pashtus, and in a simple way, Rivka hayisa mitzivay b'pardan Aram b'chutz la'aretz. Rivka was from Padan Aram, which is outside Eretz Israel. Etzel b'tzolaha Arami v'lachay v'halav ben Arami kishwana ben Hari v'hinasban. Literally the land of what's his name again? Lavan Arami. Excuse me, which is representing Ban, or the coarse physicalness of the world. שכלויסי של אליעזר המזבט בכך, שעליו להוציאי משם להביאה להיות אשר ליצחק. וכן הזמן. And therefore Eliezer had to go out there and to bring her back to Yitzchak. He represented Ma, the masculine or spiritual energy. That they can literally become one flesh. Ma uban, spiritual and physical, soul and body. Yavana base Yisrael ba'olam has hagashmi. And their offspring, literally the house of Israel, the Jewish people, in this physical world, because the ultimate purpose is to bring forth offspring. Pshutam, excuse me. That the ultimate goal of the Jewish people is to create offspring. And it says that the offspring, or the children of the righteous people, are not just physical children, but they're good deeds. According to Torah, every person you teach Torah to becomes your child. In a way, your spiritual child. Because you're now connecting, you're taking this divine energy of the Torah, and you're bringing it to others, and therefore they become like your offspring. So, one it says in the Perkei in the ethics of our fathers in the Mishnayos raise up many students, that the whole goal is not just when a man and when a woman come together and have physical children. That's one of them. But the whole reason it says when God said be fruitful and multiply, it's for one reason. Not so we could raise up children so they become successful and take care of us when we're old, or not so that we have someone who could take us to the baseball games, but we raise up our kids so we can educate them in Torah and mitzvahs to bring more divine energy into the world. And every time you do a good deed, you're creating a spiritual child. And a good deed, a mitzvah, is unifying. Mitzvah is the same root mitzvah, which means to connect. So whenever you do a mitzvah according to the Torah, you're literally connecting physical and spiritual, this whole process, and you're creating offspring. You're creating spiritual children. And that's the whole purpose of the Jewish people throughout all the generations, to bring this spiritual divine energy into the world. All and according to this, we can understand how Eliezer, his job as an emissary, he was given the power to bring about the unification of Ma and Ban, again, the male and female energies, which is connected to the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, in the service of Hashem, to bring about the giving of the Torah. And this is drawn down and applies in all times and all places. And this ultimately will manifest in the true and complete redemption. As we said above, the divine, spiritual, and physical energies will have complete unifications. That Abraham, we know, began the process as the first Jew. He was the forerunner, if you will, of bringing forth the giving of the Torah. Again, the Torah is God's blueprint for creation, the specific instruction manual on how we fulfill our divine purpose of unifying spiritual and physical, soul and body. Abraham, and therefore we see that Eliezer was a true servant, was a true shliach of Abraham, because he was given the full power of Abraham as a conduit, as a channel, if you will, to take that divine energy and bring together Yitzchak and Rivka. Ta'avadan, Shal Elokim, Es Elokim, Al Hazeh, Hagidui Shal Anuchi, B'Matan Torah. Ultimately manifested in God revealing himself to Moses and the Jewish people on Har Sinai, Mount Sinai, and giving us the Torah. Zion. Okay, I'm going to, we still have a good amount of ground to cover, so I'm going to start speeding it up a little bit. It's a lot. There's a lot of deep concepts in here, and it's just a lot to analyze. The Rebbe, in just a seeming, in a seamless way, has literally brought forth the specific marriage of Rivka and Yitzchak, and into the general marriage of all the Jewish people with Hashem, has brought forth the specific concept of this energy coming together between them two, and brought it forth for the energy throughout all of the entire creation, emphasizing the duality of prati and klali, or specific and individual versus communal or general. And he's just weaving all these concepts together, and we're in this constant state of microcosm and macrocosm, right? And in a way, it's this sikha could really be analyzed and reanalyzed as a map for life, because one of I don't want to digress too much, but one of the most important things we could do in our lives, not just in our connections to God, but in our everyday, whatever we're doing, wherever we're seeking success in any type of relationship or any type of business or any type of venture, we have to all the time focus in and out, right? You have to deal with the trees and deal with the forest. You've got to always have in mind what your general goal is. Like, where am I going? What is my purpose? If you're not looking to achieve or accomplish something, you'll never accomplish it. You just can't leave things up to, blow in the wind and hope that you as a leaf just falls in the right place. You have to have goals, and you have to have your general goal in the mind all the time. But at the same time, you got to dig deep. You got to go very specific in the details of where you're working. Otherwise, you're just going to kind of float around and, I'll use the quick example of someone who wants to lose weight. So you start at the beginning of the year, and, someone that's fat, they say, I want to be skinny. So, okay, great. So what are you doing about it? I'm going to be skinny. And then days go by, and weeks go by, and months go by, and then they go on a crash diet for a few days, and they lose a few pounds, and then they gain it all back, and another year goes by, and they look the same because they had a general goal in mind, but it didn't come specific. Specific is every day. How am I going to do this? I'm going to start counting my calories. I'm going to cut back 10% of my caloric intake every single week for 4 weeks. Then I'm going to cut back another 10%. Then I'm going to start exercising. I'm going to start 1 day a week, then go to 2 days a week, then 3 days a week. And you're going to start dealing with those individual details. But at the same time, you always have to have in mind, what is the big goal? Again, microcosm and macrocosm, general and specific. Zion. But still we have to explain, Al pi amor, hayisa tzrika liyois ikar ha'arichois be'etzem hashidduch shel Yitzchak ve'Rivka v'lo b'shlichos ha'boel shel Eliezer v'kana liyehud v'dua ba'aricha ba'torah ha'shlichos atzmai. We still have to understand in a deeper way. We already touched on it, but how the entire Torah portion is focused on the Shlichus of Eliezer and not on the specific goal of reaching, which is the marriage of Rivka and Yitzchak. Why is the general length of the Torah focused on the Shlichus itself and not on the goal? There's, again, a little blip of the actual marriage. As call hapratim the ein yilech. Kitzal Eliezer kim es shlichos Yisrael before. V'zeh gufo muvan. Shlichos Yisrael shel Eliezer b'nogah le'etzem ha'inyan shel Yehud ma'u ban shehu ba'al. That the main job of Eliezer was to bring about the unification of Ma and Ban. In actuality, again, these divine energies, physical and spiritual, Yitzchak and Rivka. V'yesh l'mar achad b'yuram b'zeh, v'al pi zeh yuvan hatam medua Eliezer yeh dafka shliach lo shalchan. And now we're bringing back this concept that we have to say that specifically Eliezer was a shliach. He was an emissary. He was not a matchmaker. If he was a matchmaker, we would not have been able to dedicate so much time in the Torah portion talking about him, because it's not about him. He's just a pipe. He's just a flow through from Abraham. And therefore, in order to bring about an actuality, the service of drawing down this energy which unifies ma and ban, masculine and feminine, spiritual and physical, once again, we see it's necessary. Wait 1 second. Let me make sure I'm reading this right side. It's necessary, therefore, the person in actuality that it should be, that is by him and himself. Now we're going to get into us as our individual capacity of how Eliezer is a representation of every single one of us, and how every single one of us is an emissary of God, and how every single one of us has to balance out how we're going to bring forth our mission and how we're going to complete what we need to do in this world. And therefore, the Rebbe now is taking these concepts of ma and ban, spiritual and physical. And before we are focusing on that Rivka represents the body or the physical or the ban energy. Yitzchak represents the masculine or the spiritual or the ma energy. Eliezer's job was to connect them together. Now the Rebbe is taking it even deeper into Eliezer himself and saying if Eliezer had to bring about the unification of these energies of spiritual and physical, if you will, that means he himself, that means every one of us has to have these same powers within us, these same ma and ban energies, this same concept how on one hand we are connected to ma, which is we're a general flow-through pipe of energy from the one who sent us, which is God. And on the other hand, we have to have a unique individual personality. We have to have an existence of ourself, which is ban. We are physical bodies. And we have to take this divine energy and bring it into our physical bodies and manifest that as our mission in the world. In other words, God didn't create us as robots. If he wanted every one of us to serve him in the exact same way, we wouldn't have free choice. We would just be. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of people serve God, like robots. Wake up, pray, put on my tefillin, go to work, come home, pray. There's no meaning, there's no life, there's no passion. It's just rote. God's saying no. You have to be a person. You have to nullify your will as a person to God. So you have to be on one hand completely nullified to God. That is the ma energy. That's the spiritual energy. That's the energy as a shliach where God sends you as his emissary. But at the same time, we have to be people. We have to use our own individual skills and abilities that only we have. That's the ban energy. That's the physical energy. That is where we're taking this divine energy of God and connecting it to our own individual missions. And therefore, a true emissary must unite two complete opposite energies. One, we are an independent existence, separate, so to speak, from the one who sent us. Bar da'as bifnei atzmai, we have to use our brains and do what makes sense that we can do, and they say there's a saying in the Torah that misplaced what is false humility is worse than pride. In other words, To walk around and just say, like, who am I? I'm nothing. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. I'm nothing. I'm nobody. You're never going to do anything because you're going to think you're a loser. You're going to say, who am I? Who's going to listen to me? What am I? I'm nobody. I'm a nothing. Who am I? No. We have to understand that every one of us is a godly being. That God created every single one of us and gave us powers that no one else has. That's why we have different retinas. That's why we have different fingerprints. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here. God doesn't make mistakes. He didn't just use us as a litter just sprinkles to put all over the world because he has nothing else to do. Each one of us is here for a purpose. We must seek out and look inside of us. And if we can't do it, take a friend, take a rabbi, take our wives, take someone who knows us and say, what do you think my abilities are? And we have to take those divine abilities and not have false humility. Know what we're bad at, know what we're good at. In business, it's called a SWOT analysis. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. We have to do that, each one of us. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my opportunities? What could I do with these things? And what are the threats? What are the things that potentially could throw me off course? We have to take an honest assessment and figure out who we are, what abilities we have. That is this first concept. That means we have to be individuals. We're not robots, individuals. But at the same time, we have to balance that with a complete opposite energy. Excuse me. We have to be completely nullified to the one who sent us. Selfless. It's called Mesirus Nefesh, self-sacrifice. To acknowledge that we are emissaries of Him, of God. We're not here for ourselves. And not to change or go against the will or the knowledge of the one who sent us. And if we do so, we're no longer a shliach. We're no longer an emissary. And we have to know and carry forth our shlichus with the power of the one who sent us. Because the shliach is like the one who sent him. Literally. Again, we're going to dig into this, but we have to understand that every one of us is an emissary of God. Every single one of us. There's two big pitfalls right here that we have to work on. One pitfall is misplaced modesty. One pitfall is to say, I'm nobody. Yeah, I acknowledge that God sent me into this world, but He must have made a mistake because who am I? I'm a no one. I'm a nothing. I've got nothing to offer. I've got no one to help anyone. And we just focus on negative things and we don't do anything. That's one major pitfall. We have to say, no, I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. Not everything I say is going to be right, and everything I do is I'm going to be right. But I'm going to do my best. I'm going to do my best to keep improving myself. If I hurt someone else, unintentionally, God forbid intentionally, I'm going to do my best to apologize. I'm going to do my best to make it right. But I got to move on. I got to keep moving. I got to fulfill and use my skills that God gave me. If I don't, this is one pitfall. Another pitfall is to say, what? You know what? I got skills. God teach me how to talk. God taught me how to rap. He gave me these abilities. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to become rich. And I'm going to try to spend my whole life chasing after money and accumulating as much money as I can. So when I have a midlife crisis and I'm living on Prozac and I don't understand why I'm depressed when I've got so much, it's another pitfall because you're now for yourself. You've now realized that you have built abilities. You now realize that you have God-given talents, but you forgot about the one who sent you. You forgot about God. You forgot about it's not about me. It's about being God's partner. And it's only through God's grace that I have these abilities. And therefore I need to use them to make the world a better place. No one says you have, the Rebbe said we should all be rich. No one's saying deprive yourself. No one's saying you have to live in a hut in the middle of the desert with no air conditioner. No, live good. Happy. Buy a nice house. Have a nice car. But don't live for yourself. Live for others. Live for God. Fulfill your divine purpose. It's again, there's just so much here. But we have to realize this is the energy. This is what it's about. It's about both of these realizations and bringing them together. The marriage is not only about Eliezer and Rivka. It's a marriage from ourselves. We have to marry together the divine, our creator who sent us into this world, with myself, with my own powers, and bring them together to be God's partner in making the world a godly place. Where am I? Okay. And this is what it means, unifying Ma and Ban. Hanashama Ma, Yehudi, the soul of the Jew, which is Ma, which is the spiritual component, if you will. You know, wow, what's happening, Ruben? See you, brother. To reveal in our essence that we're one with Hashem. Neshama shenatiti b'torahi, that the soul that God put inside of me is pure. Every single one of us literally has a part of God inside of us. Shalom. Every one of us has a part of God inside of us. That is why I say this 1,000 times. I'm living proof of it. I've been around the world. I've been with billionaires, with poor people. Show me any Jew. Any single Jew in the world. I don't care how much money they could have. They could have $100 billion. They could have 50 yachts and 1,000 houses and teams of servants, and they could have 100 wives. If they're not fulfilling a divine mission, if they're not connected to their creator, if they're not in a state of realization and consciousness that they're not here for themselves but for God, they are not happy. They are not. They may pretend like they're happy. They may be having fun, but inside they're empty, because once you separate yourself from your creator and you cut yourself off from your source, you can't have real life. It's impossible. Not because I said so. It's impossible. You can't take a bird and clip its wings and stick it in a cage and say, look, it's singing. Look how happy it is. It's not happy. It's miserable, because it's not supposed to have clipped wings in a cage. It's supposed to fly. That's why it's here. That every single Jew is an emissary from God, and we got sent from God, and he took our souls and stuck it in our physical bodies instead of stuck us down into this physical world, again representing Ban, the physicality of the world, and our soul representing Ma, the spirituality. The soul that you put inside of me is pure, God. And therefore every single Jew has to activate and actualize these two energies of Ma and Ban together. The soul and the body. If you're not, it's the same concept. If you're not living a life in Torah and mitzvahs, how can it be that you realize that our soul, we said already, there's 5 levels of our soul. The upper 2 levels of our soul, the Chaya and Yechida, are so spiritual, for lack of a better term, that the spiritual encompass, the spiritual magnitude is bigger than the entire world. It can't go into our physical body. The 3 levels of our soul that are enclosed in our physical body are so much of a majority of our body, and yet countless people spend 99% of their energy focusing just on physicality. You live in a place, everyone's going to the gym and they're buff and they're eating and they're healthy, alavai, or they're not healthy and they're stuffing their face, whatever. But what about the soul? You can't have a world where you're just a body without a soul. And the opposite too. You can't just learn Torah all day long and eat like a glutton and walk around and you're overweight and you're eating junk food all day, but you're learning Torah. No, you have to take care of your body too. It's a duality, soul and body. The Rambam speaks extensively about the importance of the health of the body. This is a soul and a body together. that literally the light of the soul lights up our bodies. Guf is bata neshama. And the body needs to be subservient to the soul, not the other way around. Our soul isn't here to enliven our body so we can just gorge ourselves on food all day long and the pleasures of this world. On the contrary, the body is here to serve the soul so we can be healthy, so we can run to do mitzvahs, help more people, do more good in the world. And that's the whole point of why our soul enclosed into a physical body, so we can do Torah and mitzvahs, because we need a body. You got to put tefillin on your physical arm, right? These are mitzvahs we need our body for. Sheheim dafka b'davarim hagashmiyim, specifically the physical mitzvahs. The hemshek v'hagulus ezeh hakodesh or hakodesh bo gashmis ha'olam, to light the world up with the energy of God, to bring the godly energy into the physical world. And the whole point is that we should acknowledge and recognize and bring a state of fusion of our souls and our bodies. Ma'uban, with Hashem, right? The ultimate goal is that we balance this energy inside of us, our souls and our bodies. And then we're a perfect receptacle to balance the energy of God with us. And literally we are like emissaries of the upper man, of our upper, each one of us in the world of Etzilus. Etzilus has a perfect spiritual map of our true reality. In other words, it's too beyond the scope of where we are right now to get into this in detail, but we have what is called as an Adam Elyon, an upper man. And that upper man is where our sfirot, or divine attributes, or our emanations, exist in perfection up in the spiritual worlds. Our goal is to take our physical bodies and nullify them to our souls, so that we become the perfect conduit for the divine energy from above and below. Everything just flows. Flow. Mamash, literally like our spiritual counterpart above. And therefore, for sure, we have to say Eliezer is a shliach and not a shotgun. He's not just a matchmaker, but he's a true emissary to bring about the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka. And therefore, his main work, of course, was to bring about the completion of these two energies of Ba'uban, physical and spiritual. Literally, like the one who sent him. And therefore, we see for sure why Abraham had to give everything over to Eliezer, to give everything over to Yitzchak. He couldn't hold anything back. Because he had to bring forth all his power to bring. Keep in mind, by the way, we're talking about this, but this is not simple things. I'm not trying to make it seem it's like sticking two pieces of paper together. The nature of the soul and the body are two complete opposite realities. The soul wants to go back up with God. It wants nothing to do with this physical world. It wants to literally be part of the spiritual world, where it's not bound with a physical body, where it's not stuck together with an animal soul that's dragging it into do all these things that it's complete contrary to what it wants. It wants to sit with God in the upper worlds. And the physical body doesn't really want anything to do with spirituality. It wants to eat, drink, make money, sleep, do physical, animalistic things. They're two complete opposite things. And we have to work. And that's what the Torah is. The Torah is the bridge to help us bring together these two energies. It's constant work. Being a Jew is a full-time job. You can't sleep. This is nonstop. We're all the time working to bring these two energies together. And that's the whole point of Eliezer's job, to bring these these energies together. And that's the whole point of each one of our jobs. And that's why Abraham had to give everything over. To unify these two different opposite energies. And it will reach its complete manifestation in the true and complete redemption. And therefore we will have the unification of all the matters of the Torah and all the mitzvahs. Kach she'ein shum divrei chutz mimenu. And nothing will be separated. There'll be no outside forces. All the negativity will just break away. And specifically, it's the power of Abraham that gave forth, our forefather, the ability to unite these two energies together. And as we said, in the true and complete redemption is when it will be manifest in its completion. Okay, let's keep jamming. Ches, alpi zet, yesh lomar biora shel al divrei pele. And according to this, there is to say something wondrous, a biora Hasidus, as brought down in Hasidus. Hold on one second, I'm skipping the brackets. Let me just see where they go. Oh, okay. The Parshas of Yizkak Rivka Eino Mafua B'Makoimo HaTorah or Parshas Chayasara, and the Dafka B'Lakuti Torah B'Soifei, the Parshas Bracha. The Yesh Lamad, it says that this whole explanation, according to Chassidus from the Alter Rebbe in his Sefer, his book of Lakuti Torah, is not brought forth in the Parsha of Chayasera that we're learning, but it's at the very end of the Sefer. Just explain what that means now. The Kuti Torah, va'achachak boyim the drushim shel shir hashirim shetachnai hud shleimus. And I'm going to just read through this part quickly and then explain outside. We're running short on time and potentially may have to go over to get to the end. So this is a little bit of a sidebar, if you will. The Vichad is the right Indian Zeb, I already said that part. Kavanahu shleimus and Yisrael and Yehud shal Yisrael v'Kodesh Baruch Hu. השלמה של ייחוד מהאובן, כפי שהגאולה מצווה השם. However, בתחילה, ספר לקוטי תורה בפרשת ויקרא, skip that, מספר העניין השליחוס למעלה, וכל אחד מישראל הוא שלוחו של אדם אל יין כמוהי, כבש בו שלח על יסוד נשם על הגוף, למטה כדי שברה שליחוס בעולם. יש לומר שזה דברי זה נסבער בתחילה לקוטי תורה נרמז, בתחילה של עבודה האדם. Okay, fine. Basically, just explaining how this whole explanation is not where it normally should be, which is in Parshas Chayaser, where we are now. But in the Lakuti Torah of the Alter Rebbe, it's at the very end, because it's emphasizing how it's a main, most important function of everything. And the end is Mashiach. The goal of all of this is to bring about the redemption. And therefore, it's emphasizing even more that this is not only just a specific marriage between Eliezer and Rivka, and it's not only a general marriage between God and the Jewish people, but it's the ultimate culmination of the entire purpose of creation, the very end, which is Mashiach. Test. And from this we could see how Mashiach himself is a shliach, is an emissary. Mashiach zeh hu mishliach. Because the ultimate goal of Mashiach and his ultimate purpose is to bring about this unification of these energies of Ma and Ban. We know that Mashiach will be the final seal, if you will, between physical and spiritual uniting as one. That he is the emissary of God to bring about the true and complete redemption. Which will bring forth the ultimate completion of soul and body. Yisrael, the fact that the Jewish people and Hashem are truly one. We are God's physical body manifestations of his will in this world. And the ultimate revealing of God will take place in this physical world. and the whole world will be transformed into a dwelling place for God. As we point out many times in these sikhas, the ultimate purpose of creation is not heaven. It's not to get up to the spiritual worlds, but to transform this physical world into a dwelling place for God. הגדר של שליח ומזבטה להיברא ויחוד בין שני המינים ובעל מציאות לעצמו כביכול של נשמה בגוף בשר ודם. And we see Mashiach, שהוא מלך בבית דוד, that Mashiach himself is a manifestation of both of these energies too. That he is a physical person, literally, of flesh and blood from the house of David, and he will fight the wars of God and he will be successful. And he's literally completely nullified and one with Hashem. Kind of similar to Moses was, Moshe Rabbeinu. Complete selfless, godly energy and a physical body. שכן כדי לפה as יהודי הנשמה בגוף, ייחוד נשמה בגוף בישראל, and therefore he has the power to bring about the unification of the souls and bodies of all the Jewish people. You know, Mashiach is the Yechida Klalit. He's the general soul of all the Jewish people. Yichud haruchnias hanashamos ba'olam, hagashmis ha'olam, the unification of spiritual and physical in the world. That he will manifest. I've been using that word a lot tonight, but it keeps coming to mind. The ultimate culmination of physical and spiritual as one. Yud. Al pizet yuvan b'teichen shel b'kashes Moshe shlach yabetishlach. And according to this, we could see the question that we started out with earlier on, why Moses said to God, don't send me to redeem the Jewish people from Egypt, send Mashiach, send the hand of the one you're going to send. Because what Moshe really wanted was the unification of him, the first Redeemer, with Mashiach, the last Redeemer. In other words, he wanted Mashiach. He was living Mashiach now back then. Moshe Then Moshe himself represents Chokhmah, that's his main divine attribute, or is the wisdom concept of the Torah. Moshe kibal Torah misaynei Mashiach metzar atzmo inish malchus. The very first sphera, which is Chokhmah, moving Keter aside from a second, where is the source of all the energy. The Torah is the source of God's wisdom, if you will. And Chokhmah is the source of wisdom, or God's energy, if you will, that comes into the world. And Mashiach represents Malchus, which is kingship, which is the final sphera, which is the lowest aspect of creation. In other words, in a way, Moshe represents the highest spiritual component, and Mashiach represents the lowest physical component, because God's kingship needs to manifest in this physical world, specifically to those that are the furthest away from him, meaning down here in this physical world, and even spread out to the nations of the world. Ben or Hashemesh or Halavana. And we see this is also a unification of the highest spiritual energies, if you will, which represent the Mashpia, or the giver, and this is the Chokhmah, or the wisdom energy, with the lowest physical energy, or the receiver, which is the Malchus energy, which is Mashiach, also represented by the sun, which is the ultimate giver of energy or light, and the moon, which is the ultimate receiver. Again, another allusion to God, if you will, as his energy being represented through the sun, and the Jewish people as their energy as receivers being through the moon. Moshe kabal Torah misinai musara kabal es kol haTorah shehu makor kol hashpa'as v'menu nimshach kol ha'inyanim klo v'koach levuah. And therefore, we see that Moshe brought forth this divine energy, which brings forth the power to bring about redemption. Wow, it's getting late, and we still have a decent amount of ground to cover. Let me try to speed it up, but there's a lot of good stuff here. We may go over a little bit tonight. My apologies. Let's see what we can do. בסוף זמן הגלוס, אבל יש בו זה מעלה המקבל. על ידי ביטול הוא כלו בתוך הפנימיוס, אז כל המשפחה מלמעלה. אדרבה, אור המקבל מגיע ונוגע בדרגה נהג לישראל מאור המשפיע. כפי שהסגר בגול המצווה שלמה, נקרא סביב גבר. That we see that that Mashiach will represent the advantage of both of these energies. The divine energy from above, which we said is like Moshe, which is his chokhmah, or the beginning of the process of the sfirot, of the chain of creation. And he says, wow, you guys are up late. And Mashiach, which represents the receiving energy, or the Makabel, which is the lowest aspect of creation. And in fact, it says when Mashiach comes, it says, Nekeva Soviv Gavra, the female will be above the male, because the ultimate purpose of creation is for the receiver, for the physical reality of the world to even be higher than the spiritual reality of the world. It's beyond our comprehension how that is, but the ultimate purpose of creation is this physical world. It's not the upper spiritual worlds. And therefore we see the ultimate purpose is, even though right now in the exile, the soul takes precedent over the body, when Mashiach comes, the physical body will actually give life to the soul. That our bodies will actually transform to become holier than our souls, if you could imagine such a thing. And this is through the power of the Atzmos, through God's power of his essence, because God creates spiritual and physical, and only God can unify spiritual and physical. ועד שעשי לבוא הנשם נזירס מן הגוף ולכן דווקא משיח יבוא as a גאולה שלמה של כל העניינים של משה רבנו. And therefore Mashiach will be the ultimate redeemer. That Mashiach represents, we said, the receiver, the malchus, the physicality, that he will be in a higher level than Moshe, who is the original giver, who is the original spiritual energy. ויש לומר שהידי זה שמוישה הצליח בפועל שלח דעבידה תשלח על ידי זה שגולח ראשון של גולח הרעים. And therefore we see why Moshe said, send by the hand of the one you will send, meaning he was the first redeemer, but he wanted God to send and bring a connection to the last redeemer. Because he wanted to unify both of these energies. And now we see Mashiach himself will also have both of these energies. He will have the energy of Moshe, meaning he will be a Rav. He will be the biggest rabbi of all times, taking God's chokhmah, God's wisdom, and spreading it out to the world. And at the same time, he will be a melech. He will be a king. And his job will be to be God's physical, human representatives of all of creation, of the entire world, in this physical world. There is to say, and we see this also, the fact that Mashiach is the same numerical value of Shliach, but adding on 10. That Mashiach is the gematria. Every Hebrew letter has a corresponding numerical value. Aleph is 1, base is 2, etc. So the numerical value of Mashiach is 358. The numerical value of Shliach is 348. It's 10 different, 348 to 358. And what does it represent? The Shlemos Yigilu Mashiachu Aideshu Mebatzaz Avodas Kashliach in Kol Esr Koichos Hanefesh Machokma Ad Malchus. Because that the ultimate way to bring Mashiach is by being a shliach, by being an emissary of God, and using all 10 of our soul powers. An emissary is gematria, numerical equivalent of 348. Take our 10 soul powers together, that's 358. When we utilize our divine abilities to the best of our ability to bring about redemption, we become God's representatives to bring Mashiach to the world. Yud Aleph. My apologies, we're probably going to go about 10 minutes over what our normal. I usually have make a hard stop at 11. I'd say that's it. We're not going past then. And Baruch Hashem, we've I think about 95% of the time we pull that off. But it is a long sikha, and I really had to explain it in depth because there's so much here. So let's there's a lot of good stuff here in the final few letters. So let's crank it up. Yurav. Al pi yadua shekol Yehudi yesh bo bechinas Moshiach Moshe bechinas Mashiach. Mazeh muvan shebekol Yehudi yesh la'inin shnei anim hano. And every single Jew has representations of both Moshe and Mashiach inside of us. Every single Jew is an emissary of God. The Shemesh Eskreni, I was placed here only to serve my Creator. I'm not here for myself. I'm here to help God bring His divine energy into this world and make this world a holy place. That literally we express our mission in this world by lighting up the world. I don't mean with fireworks, as much as I love fireworks, but through divine energy. Every time we do a mitzvah, every time we say a bracha, we may not see it, but we're lighting up the world with divine energy, with spiritual power. The ear as ha'olam kula as a kedusha b'vara loki mezeh yesh klal shnei afranim shel derech shnei ma'orez ha'gedolim ma'or hagadol ma'or hakatan avodas kameshpia Shemesh, va'avodas hamakabel levano. She'al zeh nasa lahira ha'arts or chayzer v'yesh b'zeh ma she'en b'zeh. And every one of us has these two energies. It's called mashpia and makabel, giving and receiving, sun and moon. In other words, on one hand, we have to be receivers. We have to be strong. We have to learn Torah. We have to do mitzvahs. We have to be a proper vessel to draw down godly energy inside of us. And at the same time, we have to take that godly energy and use it to give over and empower others. So all the time we're in this constant process of reflecting the energy of the sun, if you will, godly energy. And we're like the moon, which is receiving it. And then we become like the sun and give it over to other moons. So we're all the time in this process of receiving and giving, receiving and giving. You can't keep giving, because if you're not taking in yourself, eventually you're going to collapse. On the other hand, if you just receive without giving, you're going to implode because you're not spreading out that energy. But pratiyo, more specifically, and the Rebbe said, this is how each one of us is an emissary to light up the world. And we have these two exact things we spoke about throughout the Sikha. On one hand, we have to be completely nullified to God. We have to acknowledge the fact that we are here to serve God and we are here to be His partner. And on the other hand, we have to be individuals. We have to use our noggins. We have to use whatever abilities we have and our specific tools and powers that God gave us to do our best in fulfilling our mission. And we see therefore how the first Redeemer, Moshe, is directly connected to the last Redeemer, Mashiach, because they both have these individual qualities, one of the giver and one of the receiver, but they have to be infused together. And according to what we explained above, the power to bring forth our service and all the matters from this that we learn out from the very first example of an emissary in the Torah, which is the shlichut, the job of Eliezer as the emissary of Abraham to unify and bring about the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka. Again, these two divine energies, soul and body. Muvan gam kein shekashem shebelchusay harishayna yisen Abraham, and we can understand from this that this shlichus, this first mission, if you will, that was given to Abraham, the one who sends. That's why he gave over everything that he had. Because he needed to give over everything in order to complete his work, his mission. שכל פרטים עניינים יהיו חוזרים בנקודת הכללי של ייחוד מערבן. And specifically, what was that? The unification and the revealing of this general point of marrying Yitzchak and Rivka, which is again marrying spiritual and physical energies into one. Kach b'kol shlichos shel Yehudi l'shemesh eskoni. And this is specifically the mission of every single Jew. The fact that we are here to serve our Creator. And therefore, God has given us, just like Abraham gave over everything, God gives everything to us. There's nothing, it's brought down many places in the Torah, that God does not give us tests that we cannot handle. It says, so is the load, so is the back of the camel is the load that he's given. God is not going to give us a mission that we can't accomplish. He's not. And not only that, he's going to give us all that we need to succeed in our mission. And therefore, God's very essence and being, he gives over to us. In order that we have the power to unify our souls and our bodies and transform the physical world into a dwelling place for God. And every single detail of all of our service in this world, of every Jew, God gives us the power to do it. And therefore, we see the ultimate task of every single one of us is to bring forth this point and to reveal Mashiach. How do we reveal Mashiach? Through combining these two powers of Ma and Ban, by unifying ourselves and balancing out our individual powers and our divine energies with our physical bodies and our soul, and in our portion of the world that God gave us. That's how we reveal Mashiach. Yud Beis. The calls and noites, but the rain is out. Asher bon leisach al-yuchud be'inyan hashlichus. Shekame kodesh marachami nasi dereno minei kol echad ve'echad medorat hiyos hashliach shel hafutzas mo'ator hafutzas v'chol prati munas chutza shel havai gol amitis shlema. And it says, and this we see is our shlichot. This is our mission that was given over. And keep in mind, the Rebbe is giving the sicha over to all the shluchim, all the emissaries, Chabad emissaries around the world. And he emphasized that it's not only for Chabad rabbis. Every one of us are emissaries of God. And the Rebbe said that the specific task that was given to us from the leader of our generation, the Mashiach of our generation, his father-in-law, was that every single one of us is to spread out the well springs, the innermost dimensions of the Torah, the godly core of the Torah to the furthest corners of the world, and to bring the true and complete redemption. That's our mission. Kafi showing ring before. שעכשיו נעשה כל וחומר לחסביר עליהות אפילו כזה שלפני זה היה לא יהיה בגילוי שייכות לכך שבנויסה והגורסה האישס מוטלס עליו אחרי של שליח להשפיע של אחרים that the previous Rebbe appointed every single Jew in the entire world to be his shluchim, and every single one of us is an emissary to inspire and help others, including our sons and our daughters, your friends and your neighbors, and every single person that you could reach. We have to do everything we can to positively impact everyone we can. When we're living in a world where there's so much negativity being spewed on the news and the media, just so much garbage, we have to do everything we can to not let it come into us, to not let it negatively affect us, but on the contrary, to work on bringing goodness into the world, to spreading energy, to spreading godly light, to not fighting with darkness, but to bringing light. ונגע לאלתר אשר זכוי שמתייך עם ישראל, עם ישראל. גופו גם לחברה להיות שלוחים של נשיא דרנו. Because what I say, I'm gonna do this real quick inside and then translate outside so we can finish up. הכנס השלוחים על עלמי, אשר כנס לצדיקים ונאה לחיים ונורא לאוהל, והדבר, הגואה אמיתיס. הקדוש, הם לעולם, עולם גם לשון הלם והסתר. The world, the Hebrew word for world is ha'olam. It's the same word of helam, which means concealment. And our job as shluchim is to reveal God in a world that conceals him. The Rebbe says every single one of us is shluchim of God. How much more so those whose job it is to be a shliach 24 hours a day. Your local Chabad rabbi, that's what his job is. That's how he makes his money. That's how he supports his family. That is his job. That is his occupation, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. He is there for the community, and his job is to be a shliach of Hashem. But every one of us has a job. The Rebbe says, don't think that it's only their job. It's not, oh, well, he's the rabbi. It's not for me. Every one of us has a job to reveal God in the world that conceals him, and specifically to unite together these two energies of Ma'at and Ban, spiritual and physical, to bring about the redemption. Yud Gimel. And this is applicable, the Rebbe says, to the Kinnis HaShluchim, the gathering of the emissaries, every single year. No Tesef, Chidush B'Shana Zeh Miuchat, L'Kasher L'Avodas HaShluch Shlach Nabid HaTishlach, Shilcho Shal Mashiach Tikenu. The Rebbe says, how much more so in this year? Again, this is the most recent teaching we have the Rebbe, the most recent address to the Shluchim, where he says, how much more so does this all apply now in this year, when we're completing the shlichus of Mashiach himself? In other words, the Rebbe is telling us, this is it. This is Mashiach. We're in the final stages. Maduvar la'el. Yedua kavachal mashim ha'arv v'natzi darim. Shekavar siyama kol ininim ha'avoda. And we have already completed. The previous Rebbe said we already completed all of our work in general as the Jewish people. And we're literally standing ready and willing and waiting to receive the face and the inwardness of Mashiach, our righteous Redeemer. That the world is literally ready for the redemption, and we have already announced that the time of your redemption has arrived. And we literally see that the nations of the Arab nations of the world are warring one another. This was taking place during the times of the Gulf War, and this was one of the signs of Mashiach coming. And we already passed the year of Tafshin Nin Aleph, which is the year I will show you wonders. And we're now in the year of Tafshin Nin Base, where I will show you wonders in everything. And it says that I'm just paraphrasing inside. Let me see here. That Mashiach is already fighting the wars of God. It says it's one of the jobs of Mashiach. When we're talking about fighting the war of God, he's talking about a spiritual war. That one of the jobs of Mashiach is to bring light into the world, to fight a spiritual war by bringing holiness and making the world holy, which is the reason why the Rebbe sent out 5,000 emissaries across the world. This is the job to transform the world. And we see that he's already victorious. And from this we can understand that we are all ready and literally standing, and that we have already completed, again, all of our shlichus, the Rebbe said. All the work is done. The Rebbe said, therefore, since we've already done all our work, and yet we still don't see Mashiach in a complete way. And therefore, what's going on? Wait, hold on. Therefore, it's necessary to say, Therefore, we must turn up the burners, if you will. We must do everything we possibly can to bring about the true and complete redemption in actuality right now. The Rebbe says in every generation, one person is born who is fitting to be the redeemer of the Jewish people. And when Hashem announces to him, and he what's the word I'm looking for? Then when Hashem gives him the green light, if you will, he will redeem us. And it says that the time of your redemption has arrived. The Rebbe is literally telling us that we are now there, that God has already given permission, and that literally we're holding at the time of redemption. For all as brought forth by the previous Rebbe, the leader of the generation, and the only leader of the generation. We can only have one head. Rebbe stands for Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the head of the Jewish people. There can only be one head in every generation. And the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe says, is the Moshiach of the generation. And we already know the Rebbe is talking about himself as an extension, as the Moshiach in our generation. And therefore all the work is done, and all the times have passed. And therefore we already have began the process of Mashiach redeeming us. And the shlichus, the specific mission of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe's father-in-law, his predecessor. And therefore we can understand from this that we must unite together now for this specific final work. And the final work that is left is the Kabbalah es Panei Mashiach Tikenu B'Fal Mamash, to literally receive the inwardness and the face of Mashiach in actuality right now. In order that we should bring about and fulfill the final work in actuality to redeem all the Jewish people out of the exile. Devar zeh, Omer b'Hagasha b'Shabbos Parsha zeh, Chaya Sarah. Shabo Kara Oider Shlicha Yishlach Abraham Es Eliezer Nasi Yitzchak Rivka. Sheden Esim Kar Hakal Inina Hashlicha Smichad Shlemas Ina Shlicha Sham Mashiach Tikenu. And we see as we're holding in Parshas Chaya Sarah with the shliach that Abraham, as he sent out Eliezer, and this is giving us the power to bring about the actual completion of our work of Mashiach himself. Okay, I'm skipping that one thing. Yud Dalet, we're in the final letter. Whoever's hanging in there, much appreciated. We definitely went over this time, but it's okay because it's good stuff. So bring everything to a close. And from this, we could see and understand the teaching and actuality that must take place as we're standing together in the Kinnis Shluchim of the entire world, the gathering of the world Shluchim. The Kol HaRosh, first of all, the Kol HaShlichus. We must announce and proclaim the main focus of all of our work, of all of our shlichus. And the entire work of every single Jew right now, and we're all shluchim, we're all emissaries of God, must express to literally receive and accept Mashiach, our righteous Redeemer. And from and therefore, all of our work, all of our service, everything we're doing now must channel through this gate. We must be living, eating, breathing, and sleeping only to bring Mashiach, to receive and accept Mashiach. And this is emphasized specifically in this gathering. And the main focal point of the entire Kinas Shluchim is all the days of your life are here to bring Mashiach. And all the matters of your service have to be filled with this power and this emphasis. That everything must be penetrated with this specific task to bring about the days of Mashiach. Lo rak the Ravois. Shuhu oimer v'hachach shemashiach yavol az hayishlach haylak v'zeh nehamazeh el havi. The Rebbe said it's not enough to wait. We can't anticipate Mashiach's coming. Rather, we have to bring. Hu oiser kol techilui boy kadei lehaved yamos Mashiach. And everything is dependent in order to bring about Mashiach. Lashon Rabim, in a plural sense. Lo rak b'tichila shel yom echad. In other words, not only one day. And there shall yemois Rabim, yemos HaMashiach. Lo rak kasher HaMashiach hu b'cheses Mashiach. Not only when we reach the first stage of presumed Mashiach, which people, there was a psak that 170 rabbis signed that the Rebbe meets all the qualifications for the first stage of Mashiach. The Rebbe said that doesn't mean we should start resting on our laurels. We have to go full power until we get to Yemot Mashiach, until we have the completion of Mashiach Vadai, until we have for sure Mashiach. In other words, we can't ease up. We have to go full throttle ahead. But Kavana b'pashusu, mekenis hashluchim tzrich lihavod lahaveh Atletis Taibas Ketzar Shalach Shaliach Trach his Konan Ba'atzmur the Hachin Eskal Yehudim Makoimo Ba'avre Hudim. And the Rebbe says that therefore, all of us gathered together as emissaries, we must take upon ourselves good resolutions on how we are going to prepare all the Jews in all places, in all of our neighborhoods, to the Kabbalah Panei B'Shiach Tzinu, to literally welcome and accept Mashiach. That is our work. The Rebbe emphasized over and over and over again in his teachings, and especially in this week's parsha, in this sikha, that is what we need to focus on. Including all the matters that are connected to Mashiach, including teaching from the written Torah and the oral Torah. In such a way that people can makabel it, that they can receive it in a way that they could comprehend it, that it makes sense to them. Generally and specifically. Through learning Mashiach and redemption. I'd like to pause and just do a brief moment to say that every week when we gather together to learn these siras, we are filling the directives of the Rebbe, the leader of our generation, the Mashiach of our generation, who told us that this is one of the main ways we have to bring redemption, by learning about Mashiach. Because now you're thinking about Mashiach, you're talking about Mashiach, and you're living Mashiach. The more we do this, the more it penetrates through us. And specifically in a way of Chokmah, Bina, and Das, meaning that it makes sense to us. We understand what we're learning. It becomes part of us. And this is our main work right now. And it's applicable to every single Jew, not just the Chabad emissaries. Without any exception. We're all part of this mission. Tes Vav, final letter. Behirat Soyim, may it be Hashem's will. That through every single shliach should fulfill all of these tasks and all of these things in a complete way. With all 10 powers of our soul, meaning put your whole being into it. And this will for sure bring forth the true shliach, with his 10 soul powers. To shliach shabedreinu, the main emissary of our generation, Mashiach of our generation, the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe's predecessor, including all the previous generations. And then we will have all the completion of the 7 branches of the menorah, referring to the 7 generations from the first Rebbe to our Rebbe, the 7th Rebbe. And mainly, and most importantly, that we have already completed, and we are already at the final stages of our shlichus, of our work. And literally to carry forth the true mission of the one who sent us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is Hashem himself. That we need to use all 10 of our soul powers to be emissaries of God in his very essence and being. Send by the hand of the one you will send. That God should send us all, Mashiach, our righteous Redeemer, in actuality right now. And even still, that if there's any doubt, that if someone thinks that for any reason that God wants us to stay in the gullus and drop longer so he can have more pleasure from the fact that we're struggling, with our evil inclination, he said, forget about it. There's no such thing. God has already received all the pleasure. There's no possible reason. There's no explanations why we're still in the gullus. It's literally time that God sends the righteous Redeemer and brings forth the true and complete redemption. And this will bring forth the ultimate culmination of the ultimate marriage between Hashem and the Jewish people. And then we will have the female, where the Jewish people will literally surround. We will become a crown for Hashem. Hashem himself, literally, together with the Jewish people. Every single Jew and all of us together. With all of our work and all of our effort in the time of the exile. And literally, we will all travel to our holy land, to Eretz Yisrael, to Yerushalayim Har HaKodesh, to the holy city of Jerusalem, to Har HaKodesh, to the holy mountain, to the base of Mikdash Shlishi, to the third temple, and the main thing is, it should happen right now, immediately. So the full Hizgalus and Melech HaMashiach. Thank you all for joining. And again, sorry we went over, but it's a lot of stuff here. And if you have the patience and the time, I would say that these classes are saved on YouTube and Facebook. Watch it again, listen, take notes, not because it's me, because it's the Rebbe. There's so much here. And I personally bless every single one of you that you should have personal redemption. You should go out from any obstacles or difficulties, any challenges you're temporarily having, whether they're real, imaginary, challenges with money, challenges with health, challenges with relationships, challenges with anything. And we should all go out together with our Rebbe, and Hashem should redeem us right now. Moshiach now. God bless you. Have a great rest of your week and a great Shabbos.